In today's video, we investigate a crucial yet overlooked aspect of fishing, leader line lengths. You might be confused about all the different leader length recommendations, and you probably catch yourself making a mountain out of a molehill. But I promise you, it is easier than you thought. Hi, I'm Ryan Moody, helping you to fish smarter, not harder. And in this video, I'm busting a few myths and misconceptions about leader length. Now, before we begin, I'd like to clarify that in this video, I won't be mentioning specific sources or names, as the intention here is to share my personal opinion from experiences as a former charter guide for over 3 decades in the fishing industry. However, I'm genuinely eager to hear your thoughts and learn from your unique experiences, so don't hesitate to share them in the comments below. Myth number 1, the fact that longer leaders can restrict the actions of shallow diving and topwater lures. Well, personally, I don't think that's the case. We have one outfit here with a 1 foot long leader, and the other outfit has a 4 foot wind-on leader. And I'll show you that there is no difference whatsoever. Okay, I've got Roxy with me here to help me out. She's always the foreman on these big jobs. And to start off with, I'm going to show you the short length of leader. Now just remember, these lures are identical, the hook sizes and hooks are identical, and the leader is the same width. All it is the length. This one is 1 foot and the other rod is 4 feet. So first up, we're going to check out the action of this topwater lure. Yep, the lure's twisting from side to side, walking the dog. It is the pulling on the lure, it is the jerks that cause these to shoot sideways. Having that longer leader doesn't really slow it up because the lure is in a forward momentum. So the length of leader doesn't matter. Right, let me grab the 4 foot rod. The difference I'm looking for here, any difference in the way the lure is walking from side to side with the same kind of short twitches. Here's a side-by-side comparison of both lures. Obviously, there is no difference. And the same thing applies to shallow diving lures as well, because the difference between a 1 foot leader and a 4 foot leader is just not there. The lures still wobble and roll. The only thing that governs them is the action and the speed that you need to use for each individual type of shallow diver. And you only work that out by using the lures and watch how much they roll. Myth number 2, winding a leader knot through the guides on your rod can damage the knot. Not my experience. Honestly, some of this stuff is really rubbish. The fact that a wind-on leader system has various knots to bring your leader through the guides is actually so beneficial. You would have to use it for days and days on end to have those knots damaged. The only way that those knots can become damaged is if they're not tied correctly and there's an extra bit of tag hanging out or something like that. If they're tied correctly, there is not an issue, and you'll find that most anglers will retie their leader once or twice in a day or before every trip. So it's not like they're on there for weeks and weeks on end. Myth number 3, you can cast more accurately with a short leader. Anyway, we'll go into it. It's not the case. If your knots on your longer wide-on leader system are fluent at running through here, it is not an issue with lure accuracy. Tie your knots correctly and there won't be a problem. And if you want to learn how to tie these wide-on leader systems to improve your accuracy and make them a fluent knot, we have a blog on those also in the description. Now, myth number 4. With a shorter leader, there is less slack in the line, leading to a better hook setting when the fish bites. In most bait fishing situations, you are usually fishing where there's a small to medium or even sometimes a large amount of tidal flow, and the line is pulled tight to your sinker and bait. So as long as it's pulled tight, it doesn't matter if it's a leader this long or a leader that long, it is still going to feel the bite and you're not going to miss those fish. Myth number 5, shorter leaders are less likely to tangle and form wind knots, particularly in windy conditions. That really doesn't have much to do with it whatsoever. The main form of wind knots comes from mostly on spin reels, not bait casters. This comes from spin reels that has the line coming off the spool in this direction here as you cast it. But what happens with most people, when they turn the bail over to retrieve again and they start retrieving, a length of line could be longer underneath, and the line that's moving around it as it comes in traps it, so you get a loop stuck there. But the next time that you cast, what happens is, as the line comes off the spool like so, eventually as it gets closer to this length of line that's over the end, it will grip on it and pull it off while there's still a few more wraps of line above it. And then that creates a huge tangled mess as it comes off the reel. So that is actually the main issue with wind knots. Really has nothing to do with short or long leaders, because they're all traveling away from you with the weight of the lure on the end. So that is what causes wind knots. Now, myth number 6. Shorter leaders are easier to rig, change, and adjust quickly, saving you time on the water. Realistically, having the short leader compared to a longer leader is that you might only get one lure change before your leader gets way too short, which means you've got to retie the whole leader. Whereas the longer leader, you can get 3, maybe 4 lure changes before you need to retie the entire rig again. So that is actually what is saving you time on the water, and not that short leader. Now, myth number 7. Shorter leaders are less prone to coiling and retaining memory, which can affect casting performance. It doesn't matter whether you got a long leader or a short leader. It depends how you store it for any length of time, especially between fishing trips. I always like to either leave the lure on so it all remains nice and tight. The only way that your leader can coil like so is if maybe you cut your lure off and you wrap the end of it around and around and around the handle. And the next time you go to undo it, it looks like this, which then means you've got to snip it off above that coil and start again. So that's a myth as well. Another way to store your rods and reels to avoid any coiling of your leader, if you don't like to leave your lures on there, I'll snip it off and I'll just tie a loop knot, and I just slip that around one of these. And it's easily snipped off at next trip, and then you tie your lure on again. But the main thing is it's keeping your whole leader straight while it's in storage. Moving on to myth number 8. Longer leaders are more visible underwater, making it easier for the fish to spot the line and become more hesitant to bite. Certainly not the case in the salt water, especially where the water's dirtier or cloudier, and that's most of the time in saltwater conditions. Even if it's nice and green still. The only time that could possibly happen is if you're doing some kind of freshwater fishing and you're using leaders way too big. Now realistically, if anything, it's leader thickness that might get in your road if you're using a leader that is way too thick. And myth number 9, the last one, thank God, fish are able to feel longer leaders through their lateral line. The lateral line is the hearing system, which runs along the backbone on the outside of the skin. That's how they feel vibrations and all sorts of stuff. Realistically, a piece of line, whether it's a foot or 4 foot, traveling through the water in front of a lure, makes absolute minimal noise. What about all the other noises, like your electric motor, and also wave action on the surface? So the leader noise is actually hidden from all the other noise. And the only noise they're really going to hear is the action of the lure. And also things like rattles and other sonics in lures. Now that we've debunked these common misconceptions and explored various approaches to leader length, let me reveal my personal philosophy when it comes to this critical aspect of fishing setups. I rely on a 4-foot leader length throughout most of my different inshore fishing applications, regardless the fishing technique or the target species. This versatile leader length has proven its worth time and time again. First up, in most inshore and estuary applications, when retrieving shallow divers near oyster-covered rocks, the lower end of the leader system can sometimes rub against those sharp crustaceans during the retrieve. Having that 4 feet of mono leader can eliminate your braided fishing line from fraying against it, as the braid is a bit further away from the lure. Now when I'm using jigging techniques in the deeper holes and ledges of the estuaries, that 4 foot of leader can help when your fish runs past the ledge or any other structure that may be in the hole, giving you that little bit more leeway to avoid breakage of your braided main line. Now another reason why I like to use around 4 feet of leader in these same kind of areas is that the maximum sized fish that I'm likely to encounter in these inshore areas would be around about 1.2 meters long, whether it's a big barramundi, a queenfish, or a threadfin salmon around that same length. So let's head outside now and I'll just show you exactly what I mean. it's highly unlikely I'm going to catch a red emperor on a top water lure, but this is for demonstration purposes only. So I've got my 4 feet of leader starting back here. Fish is hooked in the corner of the mouth, and like I said, in the shallows, they mostly have to swim away from you. It's not as bad if they're vertically below you, because they're mostly swimming on their sides in that situation. But in the shallows, a lot of the time the fish is traveling away, which means the leader will run down the length of the body as it's swimming away from you. So if I only had 1 foot of leader, which ends there, then this here would be my braided fishing line, which is very susceptible to being cut off, as you would know. So any fish that has a rough tail or any other parts of the body rubbing across your braided line, it's going to snap it. So that's why I like to use a leader that's as long as the biggest fish that I'm most likely to catch in the scenarios that I fish. Let's be realistic. In most inshore situations, you won't be tussling with monsters of 6 feet or more. So why hassle yourself with a longer leader that's just not practical for our favourite kind of fishing? But hey, I'm all ears for your thoughts and ideas. Drop a comment below if you want to see a video where I debunk common myths and misconceptions about leader weight, or if there's any other exciting topic that you'd like me to dive into. Your feedback is what keeps us reeling in greater content together. But before you go, remember to level up your fishing game with our in-depth video on the wind-on leader system, the perfect companion to my recommended 4-foot leader length. It's a great recipe for improved casting accuracy and a more efficient fishing experience. And for even more advanced fishing tips, workshops and fish finder tuition, visit our free training page at 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏